Hello students, this is me, Saurabh Avasthi, faculty of MLZS JHANSI School. Today I am going to tell you about the summary of the chapter The Last Lesson, written by Alfonso Daudet. So students, here in this chapter we are going to study about a small boy whose name is Franz and who is a school student, and the name of the teacher in this chapter is Mr. M. Hamel. So let's begin with the summary of the chapter. Here students, Franz started for school very late that morning. He was afraid of being scolded because M. Hamel was to question them on participles, and he did not know the first word about them. He thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. The warm bright day, the chirping birds and the Prussian soldiers drilling in the open field back of the sawmill very tempting. But he resisted the temptation and hurried off to school. There was a crowd in front of the bulletin board near the town hall. Watcher, the blacksmith, asked Franz not to go so fast. He assured the boy that he would get to his school in plenty of time. Usually, there was a great bustle when the school began, but that day everything was as quiet as Sunday morning. Franz entered the classroom embarrassed and afraid, but was surprised when M. Hamel kindly asked him to take his seat. It was only after he sat down that Franz noticed that M. Hamel was dressed in clothes that he wore only on important days like inspection or prize days. There was a strange solemnness in the air. But surprised Franz even more was the sight of villagers occupying the back benches that would otherwise be empty. As Franz wondered what was happening, M. Hamel informed them in a grave tone that this would be their last French lesson. Since Germany took over Alsace and Lorraine after the war, it had been ordered that only German would be taught in schools. Now what? Franz was surprised with the judgment and the announcement and realized why the atmosphere was so serious that day. Now he was filled with regret and wished he had paid more attention to his studies instead of fooling around. Now his books no longer felt like a nuisance, and he realized he would miss the cranky old M. Hamel. Here, Franz, then he heard his name being called out for recitation. Completely unprepared, Franz made several errors as soon as he began and stood there feeling terribly ashamed. Franz was not able to read, that means. So, again, instead of scolding Franz, M. Hamel spoke about the general tendency in the village to put off learning. He was shocked to see all that. The Russians could now mock them for not knowing to speak and write their own language, that is their mother tongue. So, M. Hamel went on to say how it was not just Franz's fault, but also Franz's parents were guilty too, for they prepared that he work on a farm or at a mill than of attending school. So M. Hamel confessed that he himself acted irresponsibly when he gave students holidays so that he could go for fishing. M. Hamel then spoke about how French was the most clear and logical language and how they must guard the language. By doing so, they would have retained at least one part of their freedom. While they continued with the lessons for the day, Franz found himself paying attention to every word that M. Hamel uttered that day. He was taking lots of interest that day, as M. Hamel too taught with a zeal like never before, because as whatever he have taught in the previous time, that was like another thing, but today he have taught with full energy. At one point, Franz looked up from his work and saw M. Hamel gazing at everything as if he was trying to take a mental photograph of everything, whatever or that he could see. It was a deeply emotional moment for M. Hamel to leave behind 40 years of hard work. So, even the blazers were also seemed to be overcome with emotion for Mr. M. Hamel. Finally, when the lesson ended, M. Hamel stood up to speak, but words were stuck in his throat. He was unable to speak anything. He was full of emotions because he was leaving. So, he only managed to write Vive la France on the blackboard and dismissed the class with a wave of his hand. Here, students, you can see this sentence which is written on the board, that is Vive la France, which means long live France. So unfortunately and finally, Mr. M. Hamel was again saying France to live long.